in the late 1800s, the British were in control of both India and China. And they would grow opium in India and import it into China where it was sold, leaving many Chinese individuals addicted to opium. Around the world, there was an outcry about this behavior, about the British affecting the people of China so greatly. But the British wouldn't stop the opium trade because it was a cash cow. And that's what caused the start of the Opium Wars in China, because Britain wouldn't stop the import of opium. And then years later, they came out with morphine, and the British suggested that morphine was a non-addictive form of opium. Ha ha ha. Weren't they all fooled? So tonight we're going to talk about some of the things that are going on around our world. Many say are conspiracy theories, and I am just going to leave them up to you to make that determination. Bottom line for all of them, they're not really good for us in the big picture. But we're going to talk about that on the other side tonight on Thursday Night Live. Hi, I'm Dr. Rita Louise, and welcome to Thursday Night Live. I'm glad you all could tune into the show today. Well, we're going to have a very interesting topic, and this was brought up, or I decided to bring this up, because don't you know the hantavirus is going around, and you all need to go get some face masks and social distance because you might get it too. Now, it's interesting because it started out, well, there's just a few people, and it's not contagious, really. You know, you really have to come into close contact. And then a couple of days later, that all changed. You know, if you walk within 3 blocks of the person, you can be infected. I don't know. I have not watched the news in a few days or to see where the level of fear is about that. But it did seem like that was something that they were going to try to gear up and make us all afraid of. But hantavirus is a virus that is carried by rodents. And so, like, did somebody have their pet Ben and they were petting them and got the virus? Or did somebody go into some bad place on that cruise ship and somehow contracted it? I don't know. You know, the hardcore conspiracy theorists suggest that there might be something just a bit more fishy going on. And so hantavirus, again, is a rodent-borne illness. They suggest that it takes 3 to 6 weeks for it to incubate. So for it to appear that you have symptoms, but it doesn't mean that you can't transmit it. But people are already freaking out. And there are people already like online telling you to wear a mask and, you know, go back to our favorite COVID days. But then there are those that suggest that there is the naturally occurring virus, and then there's what we are finding now that may not be the same thing. And it falls up there in line with Lyme's disease. You know, Lyme's disease was thought that it was just found in nature. However, you know, evidence has come forward that it was actually created in a lab or amplified in a lab, but Lyme's disease is a tick-borne illness, and it leaves you with basically swelling everything, you know, kind of like arthritis, but not in the joints, but in all the muscles. It is not a fun one to get. But kind of up there with Lyme's disease. So now there's a new one, another tick-borne illness, and this one, I'm sure is just very exciting to all of you. And it is alpha-gal syndrome. And it's another tick-borne illness. And it is carried by the Lone Star tick. Makes you feel important in Texas if, we have the Lone Star tick. But people have been reporting finding these boxes filled with hundreds, thousands of ticks that are just being let out into the wild. And so if you get alpha-gal syndrome, one of the side effects of it is that it makes you allergic to red meat. So that would include beef, pork, lamb, and venison. So think of your friend, and there are some of us out there, right, not me, that have a seafood allergy. They can't eat any kind of shellfish. It would be the same kind of reaction where you would go into anaphylactic shock, and it could be deadly. Now, miraculously, if you eat Bill Gates' lab-grown meat, you're not affected by alpha-gal syndrome, or if you have alpha-gal syndrome, it is not triggered if you consume the lab-grown meat. And there was a video of this guy from the World Health Organization, I think it was, talking about, we eat too much red meat, and cows give off CO2, which is bad for the environment and our carbon footprint. And we won't quit. People won't quit their juicy ribeye steak and give up red meat. And so what better way of helping them give up red meat but to make them all allergic to it? Okay. And actually, Robert Kennedy Jr. came out with a quote, and I'm just going to read the quote right here. With these ticks engineering Lyme and rats breeding plagues, what game is Bill Gates really playing with our health? We know he's always up to some evil. But that's not it. I mean, look up. It's a bird. It's a plane. No, it's a chemtrail. Many people for years and years said, no, it is just plain exhaust that you're seeing those lines in the sky. Unless you live in a podunk town that has no air travel that goes over it, and you see these lines in the sky that linger and they don't disperse. I remember actually in my car listening to Alex Jones speak, and I was driving to Nashville. So I was on Highway 40 driving to Nashville, and he was talking about chemtrails. And on my way back, as I was getting to Memphis, I was on this more elevated area, and it looked like a lattice pie covering, with all the little checkerboards over the entire city. It was just everywhere. They were everywhere in these straight lines in the sky. Now, obviously, this is a natural occurrence from plane exhaust that it just, exists over a city and then stops. But there has, again, been evidence coming forward to break that conspiracy theory, to say that, that airplanes are releasing chemicals into the atmosphere to do geoengineering, basically climate change type activities, if I'm not mistaken. But wait, and there really is a point to all of this, but wait, there's more. Okay, I have all of these very sophisticated notes here today because I just kept getting more and more stuff. Oh, and now they're going after our pets. So they are coming out with these mRNA vaccines. So like the COVID vaccine in the United States and Europe and the Western world were mRNA vaccines, which basically they take a base carrier and then they engineer the protein that is the that they're doing the antidote for. So whether it's cancer or COVID or whatever, and they stick that on top and then they shoot you with it. So now they have an mRNA vaccine for pets. And I think there actually are other mRNA vaccines that they are giving pets. And there are starting to come forward reports of animals having like turbo cancers or dying very quickly, dying very young, that is outside of the norm for most pets. And with those mRNA vaccines, I mean, this is my fear. I mean, okay, you're going to kill my dog, but is my dog going to spread that material to me by being in close proximity? Do I need to have my dog social distance from me 6 feet so that they don't, send mRNA proteins to me that I pick up and now my body is reacting to because they're a spreader? No. I just say no. But then there's more. I swear to God, it's like I made this list and I'm like, how much of this do I talk about? Then there's something that's called appeal, APEEL. I think it's how it's spelled. And this is, I think, another Bill Gates, Monsanto type product. And it is a coating that they put on fruits, and I'm going to assume some vegetables, so like apples, tomatoes, pears, that kind of thing. And what it does is it helps keep the fruit fresher longer, except the appeal is really toxic. And from what I understand, it's really hard to get off. So even if you did soak your vegetables in like vinegar and baking soda in your sink for 15 minutes, which is what they suggest, even if you do that, from what I understand, it doesn't really get the contamination of that appeal on your produce off so that you are totally clear of ingesting any of that. Then there's Glasgow glucose phosphate, which is what they are spraying on wheat and they're spraying on oats. So imagine they're taking, and I'm just going to make up a thing, they're taking they're taking some chemical, like a Roundup kind of chemical or an antifreeze kind of chemical, some chemical that you really just don't want to consume. How's that? And they're spraying it on these crops so that they dry faster, the wheat in particular, so that they dry faster. And so you can harvest them quicker. But they are not cleaning these grains off, and then they are just taking them right to the mill, and they're being ground up and sold to you. And so whatever has been sprayed on them, you are now consuming. And so there have been commentaries of people who live in Europe or people that go to Europe, they eat bread and they have no issue. But whenever they eat American bread, they end up with having celiac disease symptoms. And so it is suggested that it is the sprays that are actually creating the issue and not the wheat itself. Oh, and did you know that they irradiate spinach, which takes away a bunch of its nutritional value, and that keeps it fresher longer too? And then there are plans to spray particles, so not the chemtrails, but a different plan to spray chemicals into the atmosphere to block out the sun, to prevent global warming, because if the sunshine can't come through as well, we won't burn up. However, whatever they spray up there, those particles only stay in the atmosphere for so long, because on this planet, we have something called gravity. And that means what goes up will come down. And so while it might take a little bit of time for these particles to settle back to the earth, they're going to be in the air. We're going to breathe them. They're going to be on the ground. It's going to be in our soil, in our water. And so on some level, we will end up consuming them. But what are they? And do we really want to? Seriously. Okay, let's see. We have data centers that are using up all the water in different locations. Different communities are having to pay the electric, or their electric bill is going up really high because of the data usage or the electrical usage from these data centers. So that's a lose-lose for the local people. Um, with the blockade that is going on in Iran, so apparently fertilizer, this sounds totally gross, but fertilizer and many fertilizers are petroleum based. And so a lot of the oil that is coming out of the Middle East is used for fertilizers in different countries. So if they're not getting oil, they're not getting fertilizers. If they're not getting fertilizers, the crops that they are growing are being impacted. And so there are thoughts that if things don't start moving forward again, that this next year's growing season might be kind of a piece of crap and there won't be food to eat, or, more competition for the food that's out there and available. And then there was another one, and this was kind of interesting. I mean, this is not a food related one, but over the last couple of weeks, there have been a number of refineries, so like oil refineries, that have had explosions, or fires. So if you think about that, because I think there were 2 in Mexico, I think there have been 2 in the United States. So you have oil, you send oil to the refinery to be made into gasoline and whatever else they make out of the oil. And then it is sold. Well, if you don't have the refineries available to process the oil, you don't have gasoline. And so everybody down road is going to be affected by the decrease in gas production or the decrease in refinery space because of all of these explosions. Okay, anything else? Like I said, I have all these like totally weird cryptic notes here, but I just kept coming up with ideas like, wait, talk about this, wait, talk about this. So here's the bottom line. Here's the bottom line. And this is really the point to this whole thing. We all live on this earth and we all breathe in this air. Whether you are rich, whether you're an elite, whether you're in a secret society, whether you're a politician, or whether you are the janitor or a homeless person on the street corner addicted to fentanyl, we all breathe the same air. So you can send all of this stuff up into the sky, but we are all going to have to breathe it. And it is all going to end up in our soil and in our water. And if you sit there and interrupt growth and growing patterns, yeah, you might be super rich and you can afford to buy, like a head of broccoli for $10 or whatever the price might end up becoming because of shortages. But is it even good broccoli? And that's the part of all of this that I don't really understand. I mean, Britain was warned about the devastating effect that opium was having on the people of China. And their attitude and their bottom line was, well, we're making a lot of money doing this. And so is it the risk of everyone on this planet being challenged by these groups or organizations that, 1, either want to depopulate the world, 2, hopefully have an antidote for Lyme's disease or alpha gal syndrome or any or hantavirus or COVID, like they have an antidote for this stuff that they are just setting off. I mean, because you can be a rich person and decide to go hunting and get bit by a Lone Star tick. I mean, just because you're rich, it don't isolate you from being potentially exposed to this stuff. What is the point? Are they trying to depopulate? Do they have antidotes so that they're not really worried about it? Or are they just that greedy and they don't care about themselves? They don't care about you. They don't care about me. They only care about the bottom line. And that's my angle for today. If you have any comments about this, please put it in the comments below. I would love to hear what you have to say. Good. All right. Only good. I would say good, bad, and indifferent. Only good. I mean, it could be bad, but just like not bad about me. Okay. So we're all good with that.